Kangi Tenjin, Dawar Jung, Gawa Meva, Keme, Cheva Meva Tan, Oha Meva, Jomeba, Tade Tumi, Tunjimin, Java Nishi, Shidemba, Zoba Sange Manangi, Tamba Dela Chance Lo. Everything that arises interdependently is unceasing and unborn, neither non-existent nor everlasting, neither coming nor going, neither multiple nor single. To this teaching that pacifies all concepts and duality, the most sacred speech of the fully enlightened Buddha, we pay homage. So, with homage to the Triple Gem and most humble greetings to all the venerables here, and to the general public. So greetings to everyone, and let me start today's topic. So, and first of all, let me say this. It is such an honor. First of all, it's such an unfortunate thing to have this conversation, the Dhamma and Dharma conversation. So I'm not going to explain in long terms, but the followers of the Buddha spread across all over the globe, being able to converse, being able to interact. So that by itself is such a marvelous feat. So therefore, I rejoice in the event that is happening today. And of course, thanks to the organizers, the Dhamma and Dharma committee. And secondly, it's a great honor for me to start today's topic. Actually, it should be started by our elder brothers. So as His Holiness always say, our brothers from the Theravadan systems are our elder brothers, and then followed by the Chen, the Buddhist from China, from Vietnam, from Japan, so on and so forth. And thirdly comes the Tibetan Buddhist. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to start first. And I think I will take that as a test conducted by our elders, and whatever mistakes that I may make by initiating the talk, I humbly request the elders to correct me later on, whenever you see fit to correct me. So with this, let me begin today's topic. And so the topic is death, or the near-death experiences in Buddhism, in Buddha Dharma, or the perspective on death and practices in regard to near-death death or experiences nearing to death. So before we talk about death, so we can sum it up as, we can sum up death as the culmination of life. So when life comes to an end, when life culminates, it is called nothing but death. So the end of life is the beginning of death. So in order to understand death or dying properly, we have to understand life or living properly. So for that matter, what is life? The question begs naturally. And so for this, I would like to quote one Buddhist scholar from the 4th to 5th century, someone by the name of Acharya or Master Vasubandhu, who wrote the Abhidharma Kosha, the books on Abhidharma, also known as the, literally translated, known as the treasure of knowledge. So Abhidharma Kosha is somewhat similar to Encyclopedia Buddhistica. So similar to Encyclopedia Britannica, this is the Encyclopedia Buddhistica. So in the Abhidharma Kosha by Acharya Vasubandhu, he states, let me phrase it in Tibetan first, because that's what I learned. So here he states, life is a period that acts as the foundation for consciousness and heat. So when we look at this quote from Acharya Vasubandhu, we see three characteristics of life, for life. The first thing is that life is nothing but a span of time, a period. So therefore, in Tibetan, we the term for life, which is sok, or life force, which is sok, is also we refer to life as tse. Tse and sok are both synonyms for life, and tse is also a synonym for time in Tibetan, a period, a time, a span of time. So when we talk about culmination of life or end of life, we are talking about the culmination of a time. So Acharya Vasubandhu states the first characteristics of the life is that it is a span of time. The second is that it acts as the foundation for consciousness. And the third is that it acts as the foundation for heat. Consciousness, because consciousness is what constitutes as a sentient being. So, we always talk about this. I'm not the body. I'm not the eye. I'm not the skin. So on and so forth. So the physical body, that is not me. So there is a me. There is a self, so to speak. Not self as in the Atma, but self as in a being, a human being or a sentient being. There is someone. So, for example, Tongkhor, myself, Tongkhor, I'm talking, and there should be a Tongkhor. So the constituent for my being is my consciousness. So within Buddhism, there are four schools of Buddhist philosophy: the Yoga-bhashiks, the Sautrantikas, the Chittamatrins, and the Madhyamika. So there are some differences between the four, but all these schools of Buddhist philosophy except there is a self, as in the sense of sentient being. And so the constituent for a being is none other than the consciousness. So as I said, there are some differences in the school of thought, which we can discuss later. So so when we have to pinpoint as someone or some being, so a sentient being, we have to look for the constituent is none other than the consciousness. So therefore, and the consciousness is an intangible thing. It is it's too subtle on its own to move or to activate other phenomena. So therefore, the constituent, the consciousness, which is our self, in order to activate other things, such as to look at a certain thing, to meditate upon something, to pick up a pen, to write something, whatever we have to do, we need to do that through a medium that is physical. And the first form within the physical world, there are the cruder form of physicality, as well as the subtle form of physicality. And the most subtle form of physicality is the wind energy, or we can also understand the wind energy as the wave, or the or just energy itself. So the consciousness, since it's intangible, we always say that the mind is intangible. So the mind can traverse through everything, anything. So because of for that reason, by mind itself cannot activate other things except through a medium, and that medium is the wind energy. And so the life force acts as the carrier for the wind energy. So within the wind energy, there are subtle wind energies and the cruder form of wind energy. So the wind energies carry the thoughts or the mind stream across the body, or across through the interaction through the body, the physicality, the physical aggregate, towards other forms of life, or towards other forms of external worldly things, and so on and so forth. So without going into much more detail, the third aspect, or the third characteristics of the life, is that it also acts as the foundation for heat. So heat, except for the beings who were born in the formless realm, so we have the desire realm, form realm, and the formless realm. Except for beings born in the formless realm, every other beings actually rely on heat or warmth. And so therefore, life acts as the foundational basis for all these two, consciousness and heat, and it is a span of time. So from that understanding, this is how we understand life. Life is a span of time, and also it is as long as the consciousness, which constitute as the being, the sentient being, is able to interact, or is able to command, or in other words, is not separated from the physicality, from the physical body. So as long as the mind and the matter, if you like, the matter being the physicality, the physical aggregates, and the mind are not separated, when they are together, we call that the life, the person as being alive. And to simply put, this is how we understand life. And when the mind is separated from the body, when the mind and body are no longer together, then it is understood as the life has culminated, or death has occurred. The life. So it brings to the question of the becoming of death. So we understand somewhat what death is, what life is. So the becoming of death, or the formation of death, if you like. So first, I would like to bring them into the formation of death, and within that transition from life to death, how can we apply the practices? So as I said earlier, when the mind and the body are together, mind and the matter. So when I say matter, I'm referring to the physical aggregates. So the physical aggregates and the psychophysical aggregates are together. As long as they are together, it is life. And when they are separated, life is, as they are separating, life is degrading. And actually that the dying process, the degradation of life starts from the very first moment of birth itself. So the next moment after birth, we are getting one step, 1 second, 1 moment closer to our death, our end, the culmination of life. So as since life is a span of time, the moment it started, the moment it degrades. Now, when we look at it in a more cruder, from a cruder perspective, so if we were to dissect the formation of death. So normally when we say near death or formation of death, we are talking about in the very last moments of our lives. So what happens there is, so first of all, when we talk about the aggregates, there are 5 aggregates. There is the form aggregate, or that can be understood as the physical aggregate. And then we have the feeling aggregate. We have the discriminative aggregate or perceptive aggregate. And then we have the compositional factor, the compositional aggregate. And then we have the consciousness. So apart from the first, which is the form aggregate, all other forms of aggregates sort of belong to the mind. To the mind. So when we talk about, we can think of that as in the sense of mind and matter. So the form aggregate is the matter, and the rest are mind. So at the time of death, in the dying process, what happens is the body is also, so since the occurrence of death happens with separation of mind from the body, so we have to understand what happens within the body itself. So within the body is made up, even though body is not, I'm not the body, and the body is not me. The body is made up of fundamentally, it's made up of the 4 elements. So what happens at the time of death is, in the very beginning of the occurrence of death or the near death, what happens is what we call the submerging processes. So what happens in the beginning, at the beginning of the dying process, the near-death experience, is the submerging of the earth element into the water element into the fire element, and the fire element into the wind element, and then the wind element finally submerging into consciousness. So what happens is, when the earth element submerges or degrades, then our body loses its the solid formation. So normally when we press on our body, the flesh or the skin comes back. If we poke on our body very sternly, if we poke our body, the skin will come back up. So when the formation of death, in the sense of earth submerging into the water, occurs, the body no longer retracts back to its original shape, living shape. So therefore, at that time, the person who is dying will look very weak, and so on and so forth. And at that time, from the perspective of the dying person himself or herself, the experience of something called a warm light occurs. And so there's something called the warm light, the increase, and then the near attainment. So, anyway, so from the perspective of the person who is dying, he feels as if there is a warm light or a low light is there. And so from the earth element merges into the water element, and the water element dries up or merges into the when the water element dries up into the heat or the fire element, then the person loses all forms of saliva and tears and all that, all liquid form, all the so the person basically becomes more and more dehydrated, and they lose their vocal power and so on and so forth. At that time, the person also loses the ability to hear, to decipher the meanings of the words spoken. And then they have what we call the vision or an awareness. So this is dissimilar to seeing something directly like we are seeing each other. So it's more of a vision. So they have the vision of they have a vision of a mirage, something that is there but not very clear. And then when the fire element, when the fire element dissolves into or submerges or dissolves into the wind energy, what happens is that person no longer, since the heat element or the fire element is dissipating, the person loses heat. And at that moment, the person is not able to think carefully, not able to comprehend, not able to contemplate, and so on and so forth. And at the moment, the person also has the awareness of what we call the firefly. So even though we can see a firefly, the firefly is not able to light up anything within the atmosphere, so except its own body. So this sort of awareness or this sort of vision comes to the person, the dying person. So please let me know when my time is up.
I think
it is already up.
Completed your time.
Oh,
yeah. You can
okay.
take a few,
so
1 or 2 minutes.
Thank you, Bande. And so yeah, let me just conclude it in maybe 1 or 2 minutes. And so basically, all the each element merges or dissolves into the other element, and when finally, when wind energy dissolves into the fire element dissolves into the wind energy or the wind element, then the person loses the ability to contemplate and so on and so forth. And then the wind energy. So here we are talking about the wind energy in the sense of cruder form of wind energy. So that cruder form of wind energy is able to carry our thoughts or carry our perceptive mind, perception, to interact with outer world and so on and so forth. So that cruder form of wind energy dissipates. It also dissolves into what is known as the subtle form of wind energy. And the subtle form of wind energy, there is also, the subtle form of wind energy also has a companion called subtle mind. And the subtle mind is the mindset. The subtle mind is also referred to as the perennial mind, the infinite mind or perennial mind. So the perennial mind actually came, is not a new mind, so to speak. It does not belong to this body alone, but the mind that has been coming since beginningless. So normally we talk about life being beginningless, but most of our thoughts, when I see all the venerables here, all the audience here, this is a new sort of mindset. But the perennial mind has been there, the continuum of the perennial mind has been there ever since the beginning, beginningless, infinity. So therefore, the mind, the wind energy dissolves into the cruder form of wind energy we are referring to here, dissolves into the subtle form of wind energy, which actually sits with the its own companion, which is more like a yin and yang thing, with its companion, which is the subtle mind. So the subtle mind is sometimes, so the subtle mind, they both situates at the center of our heart, or at the core of our body. And so when it all dissolves into that, to the center of our body, this is what we call the final stages of death. And so in that final stage of death, also known as the clear light, a person who is a Dharma practitioner, who is a practitioner of different level, can stay in that clear form of clear light, or the subtle form of mind, for as long as they would like. And since they are free from all the crude level of wind energy, and so therefore crude mind, so they are no longer distracted by anything outside. And so for the person can remain in the non-distracted, totally focused state of consciousness or of awareness for as long as they like. And so therefore that reason in Tibetan tradition, when a person dies, we let them remain in their the dying state without moving the body, without putting the body into a pyre, and so on and so forth. And so since that time, when the wind energy, when the energies elements begin to dissolve into each other, the cruder form of wind, and so therefore the cruder form of mind is no longer there, it's already dissolved. One is not able to hear properly, one is not able to see what is going on outside. So therefore, if we have to, when we do prayers for the living person who is at the dying stage, it is better to do that before that stage, because at that final stage, the person, if he has some experiences, some spiritual experiences, he can do it internally. If he doesn't, anything that we do from outside does not make much effect, does not take much effect. Of course, there is merit gained by doing the, puja or whatever, but it does not affect the mindset of the person whose the three doors, the doors, the ability to hear, the ability to see, all those doors are closed. So therefore, it is better to do the practices before that stage occurs. So I would like to conclude here, and a veneration to all the Sangha members here, and greetings to everyone, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
I would like to ask Tongkhor Rinpoche, is this beginningless mind, does the beginningless mind think in the way that we consider it, I guess, conventionally? And even though I lack inherent existence in this life, is this beginningless mind who I am?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Laurel. If I get the question right, did you say, is that beginningless mind, could it think? Is it the question?
Yeah, that's one of them.
Okay. All right. So to answer the question, so it is yes and no. It is yes for a trained practitioner. One can actually harness that perennial mind or the beginningless mind. So, but for non-practitioner or someone who hasn't reached a highly realized state, that mind, which is, it is in a sort of a dormant state, the perennial mind, which has been passing down from beginningless. So that mind is a subtle form of mind, and as the name suggests, it is so subtle that it is difficult, if not very difficult, for an untrained person to harness that mind. So for that reason, for an untrained person, you cannot think with that perennial mind, what we refer to as in Tibetan the Nyugme Sim, the original mind, or the perennial mind, or the infinite mind, whatever. So it is in the most subtle form. So almost as in a dormant state. One cannot say it's a dormant because it is a mind. So as long as we are alive, or I mean, in our living state, when we are alive, we are crammed with the cruder form of mind. So all these crude level of mind are, dancing through our life, that we are unable to harness that subtle form of mind. But as a trained practitioner, at that, if you train yourself in, especially in the mind training, and if you study the different level of mind and the mental factor and so on and so forth, one can train you can train yourself to be able to harness that mind, the perennial mind, at the time of death, at which all the cruder form of mind, or what we also sometimes refer to as the external mind, the mind that is able to, the mental formations that is able to focus on the outside world. So when all of those external doors or external oriented mind were closed down, then we can, what remains at the time of death, who is dying or what is dying, is actually that subtle form of mind. And that subtle form of mind, also referred to as clear light, as we discussed earlier, that can be harnessed. So for an ordinary practitioner, it may not necessarily be clear light. It may be, a very low light from husky sort of light. But for a practitioner, especially of a high caliber, then it will be clear light. Thank you.